Each night in that old house in Savannah carried a kind of silence that had a weight to it, like the air itself remembered what it saw, but couldn't speak of it. I was born in the summer of .1951, when the cicadas hummed louder than the church bells, and our street smelled like magnolia and salt water. We didn't have much, but Mama always said that love could fill a house more than any piece of furniture. I held on to that for years, even after I learned it wasn't always true. My mama, Ruth Hart, was a seamstress. Her hands were always busy sewing dreams into fabric for other folks' wedding dresses, Sunday suits, curtains that made small rooms look grand. She'd hum hymns as she worked, her voice soft like the breeze through pine trees. My daddy, James, worked at the port. Big man, loud laugh, could fill a room when he was happy. But when the bottles started to fill him instead, that laugh turned into thunder. I remember the first time I felt real fear. I was 11, sitting on the porch waiting for Mama to come back from the clinic. Daddy came home early, smelling like the ocean and whiskey. He dropped his lunch pail. And his eyes looked far away, like he wasn't seeing me at all. That night was the first time I learned that sometimes the people meant to protect you can be the ones who break you. I never told a soul. I just stopped sleeping, stopped smiling for pictures, stopped being a child. Mama got sick not long after. Her hands began to tremble, her stitches turned crooked. I took over her sewing when she couldn't finish the dresses. I was 12 and felt 40. When she passed, the house turned cold, and the only sound left was Daddy's footsteps down the hallway. Each night, every creak of the floorboard made my heart stop. I used to pray for sunrise, because morning light meant safety. School became my hiding place. Books and chalk dust and kind teachers who didn't ask many questions. One day, Mr. Harris, our science teacher, brought an old camera to class. Light, he said, is the truth. You can't lie to light. I didn't understand then how much that sentence would change my life. He let me take a picture of the classroom window, the sunlight spilling through dust like tiny stars. It was the first time I saw beauty trapped inside pain. I saved every penny I could to buy a used Brownie camera from a pawn shop. The man who sold it said it didn't work right, but to me it was treasure. I began taking pictures of things that couldn't talk: trees, clouds, empty chairs. Maybe because they, like me, had seen too much and stayed quiet. Every click of that shutter felt like breathing again, but secrets have a way of growing too heavy. By the time I was 14, the house had become a battlefield. Daddy lost his job, lost his temper, and I lost the last pieces of who I'd been. One night, as thunder rolled outside and Mama's picture hung crooked on the wall, I made a promise to myself. I'd survive. I didn't know how, or when, but I'd find a way to turn darkness into something that couldn't hurt me anymore, something I could hold in my hands and call my own. That night, for the first time, I picked up the camera, not to hide, but to remember. Even if the world forgot me, I'd leave behind proof that I was here, that I had seen, felt, endured. I didn't know it yet, but that was the first frame of my freedom. The summer I turned 15, Savannah was hot enough to make the air shimmer. The marsh grass smelled sweet and heavy, and the gulls cried like they were warning me about something I couldn't yet see. Daddy's drinking got worse after Mama passed. The house, once full of sewing needles and hymns, now echoed with empty bottles and anger. One evening, he came home later than usual, his shadows spilling across the doorway before he did. I'd learned to measure danger by his footsteps. The slow ones meant he was tired, the dragging ones meant he was gone past reason. That night, they were dragging. When his hand slammed the kitchen table, and the glass broke, I didn't cry, I just stood still. Something inside me went quiet, like a storm finally breaking. The next morning, I packed a small bag, 2 dresses, a loaf of cornbread, my Brownie camera, and Mama's thimble. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. I left before dawn, the sky the color of bruises, and followed the sound of the river. The water carried my reflection beside me like a ghost, reminding me I was still alive. I walked for hours before I reached the town's edge. That's where I met Miss Loretta, who ran the diner by the old train tracks. She was a tall woman with silver hair and eyes that saw right through your lies. You hungry, child? She asked, handing me a plate before I could even speak. I worked for her from that day on, washing dishes, sweeping floors, taking pictures. When the light hit just right. She never asked about my bruises. She just said, "Baby, you don't owe anyone your silence." It was in that diner that I found my light again. Customers came and went, truckers, fishermen, soldiers passing through, and every one of them had a story. I started taking pictures of them with that same old camera. Some smiled, some didn't, but in their faces, I saw truth. Miss Loretta let me hang the photos on the wall by the counter. Folks started calling it that, the memory wall. Every frame told a little piece of hope. But the past has a way of finding you, even when you think you've outrun it. One afternoon, Daddy showed up. I recognized him before he spoke. His shadow stretched long across the floor. He was sober, or close enough to pretend. He asked me to come home. Said he'd changed. My hands started shaking, but Miss Loretta stepped between us. "This girl's home now," she said firmly. He stared at her, then at me, eyes burning with something between us. "This girl's home now," she said firmly. He stared at her, then at me, eyes burning with something between shame and fury. Then he turned and left. That was the last time I ever saw him alive. A week later, word spread through town that a man had been found near the docks, drowned. After falling from a barge, I didn't cry. I just sat by the river with my camera in my lap, the evening light soft and forgiving. I pointed it toward the horizon, and took a single picture. The water shimmered gold, and for the first time, I felt free, not because he was gone, but because I'd survived him. Miss Loretta used to say, "Light don't just show what's there, it shows what's possible." That picture of the river became my first real photograph, the one that started my journey as a photographer. I didn't know then that I'd spend my life chasing that kind of light, the kind that heals more than it reveals. Years passed like photographs left too long in the sun edges, fading, colors softening, but the story still there. I never went back to that old house in Savannah. Instead, I followed the light, one picture at a time. Miss Loretta helped me finish school, then sent me off with a hug and a box of biscuits when I got a job at a photography shop in Macon. I started developing other people's memories, weddings, birthdays, soldiers coming home. I learned that behind every smile, there's a truth only the camera can see. One day, a man named Henry Walker brought in a roll of film from a local church picnic. One day, a man named Henry Walker brought in a roll of film from a local church picnic. He was quiet, kind, with the sort of calm that didn't need to fill silence. He saw me studying the prints, and said, "You've got an eye for what folks hide." I laughed, but he wasn't wrong. Henry and I got to talking, and soon those talks turned into long walks by the river, both of us carrying our cameras like old friends. I told him about the diner, about Mama, even about the things I swore I'd never say out loud. He didn't flinch, didn't pity me, just listened. That's how I knew he was different. We married under a pecan tree in the fall of '72, when the leaves looked like fire, and forgiveness. We didn't have much, just love, a borrowed camera, and a promise to build a life that wasn't afraid of shadows. Together, we opened a small photo studio on Main Street. I called it Heartlight. Folks came from all over town to have their portraits taken. Babies, soldiers, brides, families holding hands. Every time I pressed the shutter, I remembered what Mr. Harris had said, "Light is the truth." And every picture I took was a way of keeping the truth alive. Henry and I had one daughter, Grace. She grew up watching the world through my lens. Learning that beauty ain't always pretty, it's real. She became a journalist, chasing stories with learning that beauty ain't always pretty, it's real. She became a journalist, chasing stories with the same fire I once used to survive. When she got married and moved to Atlanta, I thought my heart might break from missing her. But then the grandbabies came, and with them, laughter filled the house again. Now I'm 74, sitting in my little room with sunlight spilling through lace curtains. My cameras lined up like old friends. Henry's gone now 5 years, since his heart gave out while fixing the porch light. I still talk to him sometimes when I'm out photographing the sunrise. I tell him the sky looks like forgiveness today. He'd smile at that. Sometimes I look at my old photos, the diner wall, the river, the faces of strangers who once passed through my lens, and I realize they all tell one story. How a girl found her freedom in the click of a camera. The shadows didn't win. They tried, Lord knows they tried, but I learned how to turn darkness into light. If you're listening to this, Maybe you've got your own shadows. Maybe life's handed you more pain than you thought you could hold. But hear me now, you're stronger than the storm that tried to drown you. You don't need to forget your past to heal from it. You just need to find your own kind of light. Maybe it's painting, maybe it's music, maybe it's just surviving one more day. But when you find it, hold it close, frame it, let it remind you who you are. These days I teach young women from the shelter how to use a camera. Some of them come with eyes full of fear, like mine once were. But when they take that first picture and see what they've created, something changes. You can see it in their faces, the spark of knowing they can shape their own story. That's the same spark that saved me. So if you ever feel like your life's been nothing but shadows, remember this. Light don't erase darkness it reveals it. It tells the truth. And truth, my dear, is what sets you free. When I take a picture now, I don't look for perfection. I look for honesty. A wrinkle, a tear, a smile that trembles, all of it belongs. Because life's beauty ain't in what's flawless. It's in what survived. And Lord knows, I survived. Maybe that's what freedom really is. Not running away from the past, but standing in its light, unafraid. So tonight, when I put down my camera and close my eyes, I'll whisper one last prayer of gratitude for every frame that carried me here. And for the light that still finds me, even after all these years. If you like my story, like, share and subscribe my YouTube channel.